Hello folks, and welcome to another video. In this one, I'm going to be looking at what it's like to play games and other things on a personal computer, but using a TV. So what are some things you should be aware of if you're thinking of doing this? Well, firstly, you want to make sure you're going for a TV with a higher than 60Hz refresh rate. So a 60Hz refresh rate is fine for your TV that you might play the PlayStation on perhaps, or watch your programs on, but for a PC you really want a higher refresh rate. It will enhance your user experience on basically every single level. So if you can get a high refresh rate TV, that is something that I would do. So the TV I'm using is the OLED, so it's an LG OLED 55B7VZ. Okay, and this TV is 120 Hz, but only at 1080p. Now you might be saying, oh, that's a bit of a problem. What if I want to play in 4K? Well, look, the likelihood is if you're running it in 4K, you're probably not getting to 120 FPS anyway, because it's unlikely you've got a PC powerful enough to do that, if I'm being honest. Maybe if you've got an RTX 4090, something like that. So this TV has a lot of different settings for games, modes and stuff. These are the settings I like it on. I like it nice and bright, contrast and stuff, brightness at sort of medium levels. Don't want the sharpness too high. Colour I like fairly high. I like to see vibrant colours. And you've got plenty of advanced controls and whatnot you can use as well. And this TV also has a remote like this, which you can point at the TV and it will do your settings for you that way. The only thing I'd say is the OK button is a little bit hard to press on the remote, so that can make it where you go to press and you actually move the remote up or down slightly and then miss what you're pressing. So there's plenty of options. Not all of them applied when playing in games mode, which you're going to want to do if you want to get the best picture out of your gaming mode. Same with sound mode. I output it to my Denon CD player, which has also got Bluetooth, optical in, and is stereo. So when I'm not using my headphones, I use that. I've got a review of that as well if you want to check that out. I'll give you a little thing. It's a pretty decent CD player and whatnot. So you can have an LG wireless keyboard and stuff on here. You can have your ultra deep 4K HDR, all that sort of thing. You've got safety options, all the usual things, and plenty of accessibility options, which is nice to see, to be honest. You can, for example, change what the pointer looks like. I've chosen to go with this weird little bird thing, don't know why, and you can change how fast it tracks. So that's all the stuff on that TV. And of course, here we have the TV on LG's website. So again, you're only going to be able to play it at 1080p with a higher refresh rate, and it doesn't really show it on the camera here, but if you're playing at a high refresh rate, your movement of the mouse and everything you do will be smoother. And of course this is a HDR TV, so you'll get a better picture, although that does need to be configured when using in Windows, because it doesn't always, it looks a bit weird sometimes when you first do it. So yeah, it's got active HDR, Dolby Vision, OLED. It can go up to 4K. Obviously that means it's great if you're watching like a 4K movie, for example, because you can watch it at 4K. But when you're playing with your PC, or even some of the console games, very few really, you can then play at 120 Hz, but it will be at 1080p. But there wasn't a time, it wasn't that long ago really, that these TVs of this sort of size were actually 1080p anyway. So it's kind of like, well, people might say, oh, but it needs to be 4K. It doesn't really need to be 4K. If you want to play your movies at 4K for the and TV shows for the enhanced depth and whatnot of enhanced detail, that's great. I would say go for that, absolutely. Why not? But for games, I would say playing at 1080p means you can, in most games, get 120 Hz. If you're a bit like, if you know, you use DLSS 3, things like that. I've got an RTX 4070 Super, and this TV works great for that. Would I like a more powerful graphics card? Yes, but unfortunately I'm not rich. Unless of course you want to go ahead and give this video a like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. In which case then you might get me a tiny bit more money, but not enough to spend £1,000 on a graphics card, because that is crazy really. That's a whole nother matter, what's happened with the market in graphics cards. But the 4070 Super does provide, in most games, 120 Hz or 120 FPS, but you will probably need to look at reducing some settings, or using DLSS 3 or FrameGen. FrameGen's brilliant for stuff like that. So this TV's got tons of options here. Even if you didn't want to use it with 120 Hz mode, it's got a lot of different options. Some of the stuff you probably won't use very often, natural voice recognition, all that sort of thing. I mean, I don't know how much you use that. Maybe you will. Digital TV recording. I mean, most of us probably have Sky or just stream, so the digital TV recording is probably not going to be a massive issue. It's got ARC, which is really good because it means you can just put the sound straight across to whatever you're using. In this case, I like to use, like I said, my Denon CD player, which does provide excellent sound. It even gives you all the measurements and whatnot if you need to put a Vaser stand on it. I haven't wall mounted my one yet. It's not very heavy, mind you, at 17 kilos, but I'm sure I will do it at some point. So that's all the information on the TV. So basically, is it worth gaming on a TV if you've got 120 Hz? I would say it absolutely is worth it. These TVs provide a good image quality. They provide fairly long-lasting displays because they shift the pixels a minute amount every so often, so that they're not getting unevenly worn, so they all wear at the same time. And most of these TVs will last a good long time. They provide an excellent quality picture. The remote is divisive. I prefer just a standard remote really, but I can understand why people would like a remote like this. It is pretty cool to point it at the TV and have it pick it up and whatnot. Speaker sound is what it is on any TV, apart from the old those old Sony ones like I've got downstairs. They're okay. They do the job. I'd highly recommend putting it into a AV receiver or something like that, just to get some better sound and bass and whatnot. But this is a good TV for playing 120 Hz or 120 FPS content on. And yes, it can only do it at 1080p and not 4K. But like I said, it's unlikely anyone watching this has that kind of setup anyway. And if you do, you're probably looking more towards a monitor with a really, really high refresh rate. But I mean, if we're being honest, like I play, for example, Starfield, The Ascent, they're fairly taxing on your GPU. And it's unlikely you're going to be playing at insanely high refresh rates anyway with those games if you've got the settings turned up. So although a high refresh rate monitor can make a good amount of sense if you're looking if you're playing competitively, because it does give you an advantage. I'm not sure how much of an advantage, depends how good your eyes and whatnot are and your reaction speed, but it does give you an advantage. So it can be worth it then. But for most people, I can highly recommend playing on a TV. These TVs are not like wildly expensive. I'm not even sure it's discontinued now anyway, but they'll make a slightly newer version of this. They're not wildly expensive, and they get you a really good size and a good enjoyable gaming experience for not a ton of money really. I can highly recommend it. Everything just plugs in and works fine, except the HDI. You do need to adjust that, but you probably have to do that on any panel that you use with a PC. But I can highly recommend playing on a TV. Just make sure you get 120 Hz. A high refresh rate is of course better if you can, or in fact even better if you can have like a G-Sync monitor or something like that. But if you are relatively certain that in most games you can lock it to 120 FPS, which you should be able to at 1080p and with a 4070 graphics card and a fairly decent CPU, I don't think you'll have an issue with this. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, found it useful. I hope you go out and look to get yourself a TV to play with your PC, because you'll have a more immersive experience and whatnot. And if you have, please remember to leave me a like, comment, subscribe to my channel, share this video on your socials, and check out my Patreon, which is under the same name, Chris Games Tech and Food, or Chris Tech Games Food, doesn't really matter, but it's all under the same sort of thing there. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day.